You are listening to the Enormocast.
Greetings. This is a message from Dr. Alan Honlove of the Good Catch Institute. The weather is getting colder, and you're still desperately one-hanging your fall project. Or maybe you've decided to do something easier but more miserable, like ice climbing. Isn't it time to renew your commitment to your belayer with something more than an occasional high five? Good Catch is here to help you reinvigorate the foundation of what brought you and your belayer together in the first place. Our expert staff here at Good Catch suggests that you create a safe, warm space for your belayer with the belay parka and stance belay pants combo from our friends at Black Diamond Equipment. The BD belay parka features 2 layers of insulation, a 2-way zipper for wrapping that belay device, and huge internal pockets where your belayer can keep your shoes warm for your next go. The stance belay pants bring the heat with side zips to get in and out even with crampons on. Being wrapped in the BD belay parka and stance belay pants create the feeling of a warm hug from a trusted loved one without the actual human touch that might, give your belayer the wrong idea. But nothing says,
dude, I'm just going to try this part one more time,
like some bomber insulated outerwear from Black Diamond Equipment. Check it all out at blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. And remember, if you're cold, they're freezing their ass off.
Some people swear that there's more to life than climbing. And though I'm skeptical, I think I know what they're talking about. The approach to and from the climbing, which frankly can sometimes feel like you're just walking. But then other times, you're feeling pretty gripped and wondering, is Anna going to be pissed if I make us break the rope out? Well, here's a pro tip. Anna's probably thinking the same thing about you. So why not end the game of who's the chicken and just get the damn rope out? You can also let Sportiva hedge your bets with their legendary TX line of approach shoes. From the almost a climbing shoe performance of the TX Guide to the street comfort of the TX4 and the featherweight impeccable Descent Master TX2s, Sportiva's approach shoes are all built for the abuse a proper walk-up, top-out, and descent can dish out. But what's more, the sleek style will be a wink and a nod to those other climbers at that forced lowland social engagement who are also running beta in their heads while everyone else talks about work? So shop and compare the TX line at Sportiva.com or your favorite local shop and make your every step feel like an approach to adventure. Hey, is somebody going to let me out of here? Hello?
We gotta get
Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
a
big place,
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000
seats?
You really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing them with you. We'll make I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, La Sportiva, and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is the 14th of October, 2022, about 9:30 here in the basement. Not my mom's basement, my own basement at least, here in Colorado. And this I own this basement. It's fine. Anyway, this is episode 250.5, a tweener. It's another tweener episode. We don't do bonus episodes here at the Enormocast. We do tweeners, the in-betweeners, because everything is on the feed. There is no bonus here at the Enormocast. The entire catalog is free. It's all there for you guys anytime you want it for free. Except the first 40 or so episodes are not on Spotify. You don't need to email me about that. If you want to listen to them, just use a different app. They're on all the other apps, or they're at the website. I don't exactly know why they're not there. I've been told some methods to get them over there, but you know how it is when you get into the PHP files and the codecs and all the different things. I can't do it. So it's easy. Just go to the website if you want to hear those if you're on Spotify. All right? Thank you. Oh, and if you think getting all this stuff for free is a bad bargain for me, well, you can go over to the website at enormocast.com and donate if you wish. Easy enough. Click on there. Give me a little money. A couple bucks here and there. Really adds up. All right. So this is episode 250.5, and it is a catch-up with Bron Hodgins and Jacob Cook. If you recall, a few months ago, I had Bron on the show. Did a great episode right before she left with her crew, including her husband Jacob, to Greenland for several months, weeks, months, a long time. And they just disappeared into the ether. They didn't have any sort of sat link up where they were sending out Instagrams and live chats or anything else. They just went there and disappeared and then came back. Although Jacob was apparently communicating with his mother through InReach. Invalid salad. So I thought I'd have him on just to catch up to find out what happened on that trip, because she previewed it just a few days before they left. And that's what we got here on today's Tweener. An adventure story, kayaking, fjords, giant portages, big walls, fast and light, and slow and heavy. Both kinds. All sorts of adventure with Bron and Jacob and their crew on their Greenland Odyssey. Welcome back to dry land. How long you guys been back?
Pretty much exactly a month now.
Just starting to get into the swing of things in like normal life again.
It was a long trip. I mean,
it
you
was
guys
a
were
really long trip.
Yeah. And the way it worked out is that I talked to Bron basically like days before you left, or only a couple, I think.
Yeah, this might be a bit of a time warp, because I talked to you, went on this huge trip that seemed to last forever, and then came back and I'm talking to you again in the same closet.
Perfect.
So it's like no time has passed.
You know, I sort of in your introduction, because I went ahead and put your episode out while you were gone, and just like, you know, I was like, yeah, she's out there. They're out there somewhere, you know, and you weren't doing the thing really where you were, you know, connected the whole time, you know, which more sort of heavily media kind of things do. They make sure there's satellite connections so we can be catching up in real time. And you guys were
updated
with the live Instagrams.
Yeah, that's honestly like part of the draw of the really long trips is like the full disconnect. Like we obviously had the InReach, like the sat text device, but
like a safety.
It's more like a safety thing, and I'd message my mom and stuff, but it's not like there's no Instagramming, which is definitely a plus.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit old school, which I totally appreciate. You know, my dear friend Hayden Kennedy used to send postcards, even, you know, in the modern age, because he felt like there was just this uniqueness to it. And, you know, and sometimes they would literally arrive. Actually, most of the time they would arrive after he got home. Cool. But you'd still get this like little thing with, you know, postmarks on it. There was a romanticism. The physical
object is cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, I still have them, which is awesome too. But yeah, so I appreciated the disconnectedness, even though I looked and I was like, okay, maybe they'll send something. But it was sort of fun just to be like, yeah, she's out there in the podcast, and hopefully it's going well, you know, because you're always, I mean, even someone like me, as remote a relationship as we have, you know, it's like easy to worry. There's a lot that could go wrong, as you guys are fully aware, but it appears that it did not. So let's just stick with that. You guys are all smiles, so that's good. So one of you maybe just run us back down on the expedition. I don't know. I can't remember how many details we got, Bron, with your episode, but who went, how long were you guys out there? What were some of the objectives maybe before you left? And we'll talk about whether those were met or not.
Yeah, so we spent basically the whole summer this summer in Greenland. And the plan heading out there was to sea kayak from Umanak to Upernavik, which are two communities on the west coast. And they're about 400 kilometers apart. So we were sea kayaking from the southern one to the northern one. And just all the way along that route, there are huge granite cliffs like rising straight out of the ocean. And so the kind of main kind of draw and excitement for the trip was basically approaching these walls by sea kayak and climbing some of them en route as we explored the coastline. And yeah, we had some ideas, did a lot of research beforehand. Jacob especially gets really excited about kind of Google Earthing and doing a ton of kind of see who else has been there, what cliffs are most likely to go, and what cliffs have been climbed before. That sort of background research Jacob gets usually nerds out a lot on. And I tend to kind of take over the more like menu planning and logistics planning and kind of transport. There's almost like a handover moment in the prepping of the trip. It's sort of like I do all this research and like write all these grants and come up with these ideas, and then Bron kind of takes over and like makes it actually happen. You need the dream. You need the dream and the inspiration.
Well, I think we've talked about your relationship before in that sense, and again, like, one of the things, the sort of superpowers that I've remarked on that Bron brings to the game is that, from her upbringing, doing these whitewater expeditions and things like that, and it just it really is like such a boon to an expedition, because usually climbers, that's like where shit falls apart.
Yeah, the spreadsheet game is on point.
And just to have her and her ability to do that is awesome and a real rare thing. So
so I think I have to do a little shout out to team member Zach on this one, because I was actually kind of ended up overbooking myself a little bit this spring, trying to do some guiding and coming back from a lot of traveling all winter. And he definitely kind of slid in there and actually ended up being a bit of the mastermind on the spreadsheets end of things when he saw how busy I was.
Yeah. So who else was on the expedition, and talk a little bit about their roles?
Yeah. So we were a team of 6, and kind of as always with planning these things, like I want to go with people that have good skills, but the main thing is going with friends, people that I think I'm going to get on with well for 2 months of kind of uncomfortable conditions. So we were 6. There was Zach, who we've been on numerous big expeditions with now, and he would tell you that like he doesn't know why he's invited, because he's like not a very strong climber, not a very strong paddler, but he's like kind of essential. Core. And then we had Kelsey, who's another one of Bronwyn's childhood friends. We seem to just enlist Bron's childhood friends and like bring them on these huge trips, and they're just like, okay, sign me up.
Well, Kelsey and I had actually done the multi-month kind of river trips together as teenagers. Okay. So I kind of already knew that she could handle a kind of really long, really remote trip and be like a really fun person to do that.
El Gavilan with the same woman?
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay. So then she got really into climbing, and then that made really, really excited because now we can climb together. So our friendship kind of.
And then we had Angela. Angela Van Weemish, who I think you've had on the Enormocast.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
ice climber, alpine climber, kind of.
Yeah,
and so I didn't know she was gone. That's amazing.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. She was part of the team. So I guess
cool.
Bron and Kelsey hung out with her a bunch in Mexico while they were climbing Gavilan.
Yeah,
and the three of them, I think, got on really, really well, and kind of made sense to bring her along as well. And her and Kelsey especially are like best buds. They kind of shared a tent the whole time together.
And it was cool too, because I guess like all of our bigger trips up until this point, it's been like me and a bunch of dudes, and basically this trip was half and half, like 3 ladies, 3
great
guys. So
and then the final team member was Jaron Pham, he's like a friend from Squamish. He's a very good cameraman and like filmmaker and photographer. So he was manning the camera for the most part.
Or he was kind of like head camera, and then Jacob and I, especially Jacob, do a lot of the camera stuff too. But it's nice to have that role shared a little bit.
Baffin Island was a little intense trying to make the whole film and be on the trip all myself. So this time it was great to have someone else to kind of take it on a bit.
Jaron was down in Kokomo with you too, right, Bron?
Jaron was down in Kokomo. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you guys are like, it's this whole networking thing that, you make friends and go on expeditions together. It's got to be a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, you could call it networking. Yeah, I think making friends. I prefer making
Yeah, it sounds
friends,
like
but
very
yeah.
business-like networking. I'm like, I'm just choosing friends I have fun with and going on bigger and bigger things with them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The Friends Network. That's it.
sure.
All right, well, cool. So let's just stage a few moments in this, and you guys can tell some stories. But you know, you just mentioned like you dreamed, you schemed, you talked to the peoples. I'd imagine you talked to like Nico and that crew, and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a
you know,
lot.
just trying to find information from all over, and then you piled all the stuff in. And just to tell me a little bit about sort of hitting the water and excitement, trepidation, because this climbing thing is interesting, and you know that was sort of the goal, but it's all wrapped in this paddling open water and sea kayaks thing, which is, you know, that like seems to me to have so many more variables. Now, Bron has experience with this. Kelsey has experience with this.
Not specifically with sea
Sort of,
kayaking. We
yeah.
had not.
Right.
We were not experienced sea kayakers.
Right. So tell me, you know, again, the excitement, the trepidation, you paddle away from land, you know, or like you're out, you can see it obviously, but what's it like out there paddling on the ocean, and how did the first few days go as you left on your expedition?
I'll say the start thing and then you can bring the second part in.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, for sure. So going into this trip, we definitely knew we were like a team of climbers and had quite a bit of like river paddling experience, but not so much like ocean savviness, I guess. So that was something during like the preparation we wanted to like take pretty seriously. For sure, there are like kind of hazards and things to be aware of in sea kayaking and ocean paddling that are different from, say, rivers. So just like making sure I'm talking to friends who there's a lot of sea kayaking on the West Coast where we live here. So I have some friends that are sea kayak guides and that do a lot of that stuff. So just trying to get as much knowledge as we could going out there. We hoped that we would get more practice in these inflatable sea kayaks in the spring leading up to the trip, which ended up turning into like a scrambled couple of days and a 3-night trip with my family that came out for like
So we were ready.
But just in terms of like testing the boats and kind of getting an accurate like speed or kind of an idea of like how much distance we could cover per day,
Right.
Because that was pretty unknown just with like the amount of gear we were going to have on these like inflatable sea kayaks that were maybe not quite built for like this kind of extreme of a trip. And yeah, so definitely something we were nervous about, trying to like get as much information as we could, but
So yeah, there's kind
have
of
a
like
level
this,
of confidence, I
there's
guess.
kind of like this weird like thing where you have to plan like as if your life depends on it, and you do all of this planning, but that kind of only gets you like 50% of the way there, and then it's like you kind of set out into the ocean on the first day, and it's like, all right, like what's gonna happen now? And yeah, it was not smooth. Like it did not go well. Like the first few days of the trip were like about as bad as they could be. Basically, our boats broke on the first day. Two out of 6 boats broke on day one. We paddled 10 kilometers out of 400, pulled over to camp for the night, and we were like, oh, 2 of the boats have giant rips in the sides, which is really not ideal. So then we spent 2 days, day 2 and day 3, just like repairing the boats, basically. So we were on sat text with the manufacturer, trying to get kind of information about like which glues to use. Luckily, Zach is like a soft goods designer. So
and Angela as well. So
Angela was involved in working with a different packraft company to build kind of packraft. So we were sitting there by the side of the ocean for 2 days, not moving,
like
basically just sewing. We had a little sweatshop on the go, and we were gradually breaking all our needles as we sewed through the boats, and we were like down to our last few needles. But basically the boats broke because we were just overloading them. We were tensioning stuff onto these attachment points on top of the boat, which weren't designed to have that much force on them. After that, we started strapping stuff just like all the way around the boats, like going underwater kind of thing to hold all our stuff on.
And then it was fine after that.
And then it was fine after that. But it was definitely like, is this trip just going to end before we start? You know,
it was a little worrisome.
Yeah, it was not a good start.
So you got that sorted out and
yes,
and went back out in the ocean. So again, like just describe to me each day paddling and you know, just kind of what it was like nerve wracking, or was it fine? You know, were there days that were big water and days that were smoother, things like that?
Yeah, so luckily the route, and this was part of it too, like knowing we had less experience, the route was pretty sheltered for the most part. We were actually following inland fjords for pretty much the whole way, so we were going way down this one fjord, and then we actually had this, like, overland carry, like, portage, which then brought us over into the tip of the next fjord that then brought us out to sea on the other side. And so the only kind of open coastline paddling was, like, kind of right at the start and right at the end, and the rest was, like, pretty sheltered. But what this did mean was that we had this overland portage for 20 kilometers in the middle of the trip, which we knew was going to be fairly challenging considering how much equipment and food we had. And yeah, it was kind of terrible, but manageable.
I think this trip was like definitely the most sustained physical discomfort of my life.
Exertion, physical exertion,
like just like sitting in the boats for like 12 hours a day is kind of uncomfortable, and like I've got a really bony butt and it was really sore. And like you're kind of wet a lot of the time. We had dry suits, but like kind of just like sitting in the water, and so yeah, it was like kind of hard in that way because it just went on for so long, just like getting back in the boat every day kind of thing.
So we basically ended up kind of having only like just enough time basically to like cover the distance that we had to, and we were a bit behind schedule after the boat shenanigans, and so we really ended up like
no rest days,
pretty much having almost no rest days for 2 months. And and that's not just like doing some casual exercise in between, it was like all day every day. Yeah, like start of the day after breakfast to like late dinner, you're just paddling the whole time or portaging. The portage took a week, carrying 3 loads, so doing 20 kilometers like, you know, 5 times, because if you're doing 3 loads you have to cover that distance 5 times, like going there and then back in and there. So that took a week. And then paddling on the other side, we basically would plan our rest days strategically, that we would arrive at a cliff that we were really psyched about, and we would have a rest day there, which actually was just like a prepare, choose your line pack day, and then we would climb the cliff. And then we would have like maybe 1 rest day, depending. It would be a bit weird because the push might have been more than a day. And then we would like immediately get back in the boats and like keep going again. So it just was like kind of like unsustainable, I guess, and going like kind of that intensely for like that long. We basically got home and slept for a week and kind of have maybe reset now. But yeah, it was kind of like like really like just like kind of a lot. Yeah. Maybe a bit too far, I think, possibly.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys then about, you know, your coping mechanisms, and a lot of times this I think has to do with personality, you know, like long expeditions where things kind of start to grind, like people deal with it in different ways. They shut up, they get goofy, they get cranky or whatever. Like, tell me a little bit about how you feel, you know, when you feel it coming on and you're just like, you got to put your head down. Like, what kind of people are you guys? Like, what's your coping out there when you're 9 hours into paddling? What's going on in your head, Jacob?
Yeah, I don't know. Kind of. I mean, I think just keeping sight of just like how absurd the whole thing is. You just like, because it's all kind of pointless ultimately. You know, like we just decided on this challenge, and it's like you can come up with like motivations, like, oh, this journey made sense for this reason or this reason, but ultimately it's like we've just kind of decided to do this like kind of ludicrous thing that's really, really hard, and just keeping sight of like how bizarre it is kind of thing. It's like quite funny, and I kind of get really happy on these trips. I find that I just get into the swing of things, and like a lot of like your daily like stresses kind of fade away, and you're just dealing with like, all right, well, are we going to make it this last like 10K to the campsite, or are we going to have to camp closer, or like you're just kind of dealing with like what's going on immediately. And I think I find that a lot easier than dealing with like, oh, I need to pay this bill, or I'm going to go to court in 6 months' time. You know, like the
extreme examples.
Well, yeah, but like.
Wait, what happened?
That was just an example. No.
Oh, okay, all right. That's
but like that stuff is much harder.
We didn't mention like, Zach didn't come home.
Zach's still in jail.
In a rage.
Yeah, I think I get what Jacob said.
Yeah, but just dealing with like immediate problems is like kind of much easier in some ways because you're just in it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more like present and the more challenging like exactly that endeavor is that you set your mind to, then like you don't really have space for like worrying about other stuff like going on outside of that in your life. Otherwise, like planning what's happening next, or realizing you like forgot to do these things, or this. Like, there's so many ways we're being pulled all the time when you're just like in normal life, that it's like kind of hard to break free of that. And because I really didn't feel like I had a lot of extra
bandwidth,
that it was really just like the most sort of living in the moment present, like basically what I had capacity to think about was like day to day.
And you develop these like amazing bonds too, like the kind of friendships, like, you know, the 6 people that were on this trip, like we have this kind of like, only we know what it was really like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, you know, you have this kind of lifelong bond with the people you're out there with. And I think that's quite special. And that's definitely one of the big draws of these trips for me.
Before we get to the climbing, one last question about the paddling is, what's that?
I said climbing podcast. Yeah, people might know.
I know. Yeah. Well, like I said, this whole paddling thing is the mysterious part of it also. I know how to rock climb. Everyone listening knows how to rock climb. Like, what sticks out in your mind as far as like, you know, something extraordinary that you remember from the paddling, or effective in your brain, or something you saw, or, you know, what do you remember from that, that we'll see in the movie, if you will, or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. I've got kind of 2 things actually that came to mind with that. I think that kind of something that was sort of a theme of the whole trip, I guess, which I really enjoyed. So we're up quite far above the Arctic Circle. We've done a number of trips kind of up around the Arctic Circle before, but this was quite a bit further north. And so the sun really was, I mean, we arrived at the late June. And so the sun really does just do like circles above your head, not really like dipping below the horizon at any point for the entire time that we were there. And with the paddling, it was like extremely important to kind of time ourselves with the kind of the forces of nature. So that's basically like winds and tides. And tides are on like a 25-ish hour cycle. And the winds typically were stronger in the daytime, weaker at nighttime. And so just like the whole concept of 24-hour clock is like even more relevant, because it actually like is like it's like hindering to try and limit ourselves to that schedule, and really like trying to push off with the night tide essentially. And like quite often we would just paddle in the middle of the night when the wind was the least, and making sure we were timing it to get the biggest rush of the tide in the correct direction. It kind of just like makes this almost sense of like timelessness a little bit, and just like breaking free of that sort of schedule that we're all bound to at all times. And I think I really enjoy that aspect of like Arctic travel, and it's just like amplified even more by like having to follow these other cycles that are just actually not corresponding.
So we lost 4 days.
So that was the cool thing. So we actually had a 65-day trip, but our lived experience was 61 days.
61 sleeps.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because
it just got off. It got onto your own schedule.
Yeah, you just get off and you gradually lose a day.
We like slowly lose days, and then a couple times we had these, and we'll get to the climbing soon, but like a couple times we had these kind of outrageously long climbing pushes that then also just totally, you know, set us at some random time when we woke up like the following day. But as like a theme of the overall trip that I think is like a cool thing to talk about, just kind of this like structureless, timeless, like things were moving and we were like going forward, but it really didn't follow any sort of like regimented.
Well, it's nice to be basing your timing off of the landscape that you're trying to move through. It's almost like the 24-hour clock is this just like random thing that just
exists in the rest of the world.
Well, it exists in the rest of the world,
but
it's like, it's just becomes meaningless, and it's nice to be basing your movement off of like what actually matters, you know, like while you're out there. That was cool. Yeah, that's a good answer. Nice.
Not quite the kayaking, but like it felt like as a part of the journey, a bit more than like climbing specific. Yeah. You should talk about like the mist and ice.
Yeah, the moment that stuck out to me the most was our first kind of like open crossing. So over the course of our journey, we had a few like big open crossings, and obviously it's much, much more committing when you're not right next to the shore. So like in the middle, you know, this particular crossing was, I think, about 6 kilometers.
Yeah, so nothing too big, but...
And so in the middle, you know, you're 3 kilometers any direction, and you're in the Arctic Ocean, and it's like pretty cold. You know, you wouldn't last long swimming or whatever.
I don't think we've mentioned yet that there are also just icebergs all around us.
Well, exactly. So this particular crossing,
added your image.
Just before we started the crossing, the fog came down, and we were in basically full whiteout. And we were aiming for this island that was 6 kilometers in this one particular direction ahead of us. And if we missed the island, we were like going to bath in. Like you really can't miss the island. And we obviously couldn't see it. So we were just like setting out into the fog. And also it was in this ice fjord. And so there was like basically more icebergs than there were not icebergs. So like you're just weaving through this like maze of icebergs, trying to follow this compass bearing to hit this particular island. Yeah, that was definitely...
And it was like totally calm. That was the other thing. So we were just in this like... I'm totally taking over from you.
No,
this moment was really cool. It was totally calm. And we felt like we were in like an ice box, just like totally enclosed by these icebergs that were just slowly like kind of bopping around us, and we were like weaving in around them, and like very cold but totally silent and couldn't see anything. And we're just like following this bearing like towards whiteness with these huge white sculptures like rising out of the whiteness. It was like pretty cool.
Definitely like the most out there moment, I think, of like the entire trip. Yeah.
Was there a danger of being squashed, or are you guys nimble enough?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
To get squashed?
Basically, yes.
Which one? Totally yes, you can get squashed?
Totally yes, you can get squashed. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want to go
You don't
up
go
too
near
close
the big ones.
to ice. Yeah, because they do basically, we were there in the summer months, so they do like cap off. And so you don't get hit by like a chunk that's falling off of the iceberg.
And they did, like we saw them regularly, either rolling over or like big chunks of them fall off. But you just try to not go close to the big ones. And sometimes they make waves. Like if the big chunk falls off near you, it makes a big wave.
But the waves seem to dissipate pretty soon.
So,
it was basically just like don't be close enough that like the ice chunks will actually land on you.
It's basically like a floating serac. Like it's just that. Like that's what it is. Yeah.
But it was cool actually. Not that time because it was so cold that day with the inversion, but some of the other days we actually had a bit of a heat wave in the middle of July, and we were paddling past a bit more like kind of dispersed icebergs, and there were a few days that were just really quite hot, and icebergs were just collapsing all like all day. We would just watch, and if a big piece falls off, then it upsets the whole balance, and it just has this like huge slow motion roll. And we call
it iceberg TV.
We call it iceberg TV.
Live, 24 hours a day.
If you're just like paddling, not really much. But yeah, this one day a couple of days in the middle of July, they were just like breaking and doing these huge rolls, these massive icebergs. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds otherworldly and worth the price of admission. Yeah, so let's move over to the climbing a little bit. Tell me about the objectives, and then let's go chronologically, or however we can jump around to what you actually got done and what the climbing turned out to be like.
The kind of main end goal of the climbing was to climb this big cliff kind of near the end of our journey called Keososuak, or which I'm probably saying wrong. It's also called Sanderson's Hope. It was like some white explorer who came and named it Sanderson's Hope, but the locals called it Keososuak, which is a much better name. And that's like this 900-meter cliff that was near the end of our journey, and we had some information about it. It had been aid climbed twice before, and kind of like the goal of our trip was to free climb it. But also the kind of secondary goal of the trip was to do some climbs in alpine style along the way, of just like cool stuff that we saw. And obviously like that's really hard to plan for, because a lot of our trip went through areas where there's just no information. Like probably people have been there at some point.
For sure. I think locals have
been in there, but no one's been there with climbing in mind, for sure. And so we just kind of didn't know what we would find. And in some ways that made it hard, because it's like, well, should we climb this awesome cliff that's right here? Or maybe there's an even better one around the corner, but then the better one around the corner turns out to be Choss, and you're like, oh, we should have stayed at that one. So that was hard. But yeah. So then basically we did two sort of alpine style pushes on the way, as we were 6 people, so we were 2 teams of 3 for those climbs, and then we spent the last sort of almost 4 weeks climbing Keososuak. What
were the early missions like? The alpine style ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you find?
Probably the one that stands out the most is Redwall. Yeah, you want to talk about Redwall?
Yeah, we don't skip the other ones, but yeah, basically, kind of like we knew this going into it, that the rock basically gradually got better and better quality through the journey, which was kind of motivating to get the distance in the paddle in the first kind of half, and then start like kind of picking objectives and climbing in the second half. And it really was like very obvious. Like we were kind of spent the first 3 weeks or so like paddling past like big but kind of chossy cliffs. And then we did this like week of portaging over this height of land. And as soon as we put in on the other side, the rock just like dramatically changed quality, and it was just like these incredible like kind of red granite domes. It kind of started with there's like very good like quality bullet hard and red granite, and so we immediately got like really excited about that, and pretty much right away did like a kind of small mission, split into teams and put up 2 kind of moderate routes up these sort of 200 to 300 meter faces. That was kind of like we just got antsy and excited and wanted to climb something. And then after that, yeah, we basically just kept paddling, and the cliffs just got bigger and bigger as we were paddling northward, which was pretty motivating, pretty exciting.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it came around the corner of the fjord. And actually, so like part of the story, which we didn't get to, is that I'd actually been to the area where we started before in 2013. It was like so 9 years ago, I'd been to the earlier area, and on that trip, I'd wanted to go to the northern area around Upernavik, but we were on this sailing boat, and our boat broke, and we weren't able to make it there. And I had this photo of this wall called Red Wall, and it just like I've been looking at this photo for like the last 9 years, I guess, or 10 years, because I was looking at it for the year before I went on that trip.
Basically, when Jacob and I started dating 10 years ago, it was his desktop background, this like red wall. Yeah. It's like
it's just this like I don't know. It's just really, really striking. Like rising straight out of the water, this like huge kind of dome.
Like 400 meters.
Yeah. So that was one of the major things we wanted to climb. So came around the corner, and that was there, and that was kind of like the big alpine style climb we did. And yeah, basically me, Jaron, and Zach, so boys team.
we split boys team and girls team.
Yeah, boys team, girls team. So we climbed the wall in about 28 hours, and it was pretty hard. And we kind of were planning to do a new line, but then our new line didn't quite go according to plan, and we ended up sort of climbing onto a line put up by Nico, Favres, and Bendito. And we repeated that, and we were sort of like 28 hours round trip, and we felt like we'd done pretty well. We were pretty pleased with ourselves, but then we just got totally outdone by girls' team, who was still up there 28 hours in, and we got them on the radio. They were like, yeah, we were like about halfway up, and they didn't have any bivvy gear. And
we had emergency things.
Bronwyn will now take over the story.
Yeah, so Kelsey, Angela, and I like set off up a new line. There were a few established lines on Redwall already, but nobody had climbed the kind of right part of the face. And so we kind of like picked out a line to go for on the right part, and it's like 24-hour daylight, and we already lost concept of time. So we just like started, and we're like, all right, we'll see how long this takes. We had like emergency things, like we had our big puffy jackets and like the foil, the like aluminum foil, like emergency bivvy bag things. But yeah, we basically like ended up climbing pretty slowly, getting slowed down by a number of kind of hard pitches near the beginning, and we were like aid climbing these like finger cracks that were filled with dirt and like cleaning them out with like an ice axe, and then like at one point Angela was sitting on her ice axe backed up by like a beak. She was like beak ice axe, and then like sat on her ice axe, like and then hand drilled a bolt. We had 3 bolts and like a little hand drill kit to kind of as like a bailout option when she ended up placing one off of like an ice axe. So it just like went pretty slowly, I guess, the first half. And we basically climbed all afternoon and all night, and then arrived at this ledge halfway up in the morning. And it was an east-facing cliff, so that actually meant that we had sun on us. So it was really warm. It had been pretty cold climbing at night. So then it was really warm, so then we like kind of snuggled up on this grassy ledge and actually had an incredible sleep. I can't really call it a shiver bivvy because I really like slept quite well. It was warm. We had sun like shining on us. Kelsey and I were sharing a bivvy bag. We had our big puffies. There was a water drip that was like perfectly situated, like right next to this ledge. So we filled up our water bottles. Could have used a few more bars. We like kind of ran out of food. Yeah. And then we just like had this great sleep for like 8 hours, just like, and then woke up.
This was like an unplanned bivvy out of food. Bron makes it sound like so chill.
It's like very chill. Well, it's not like, yeah, it was very chill. And then we like woke up and we're like, all right, what are our options? And like, there was hints of like possibly a storm in the forecast, and those had kind of dissipated. And so we just like decided to keep going upwards. Again, kind of route finding was hard. We ended up kind of going one way and having to bail and going another way. So it was still kind of slow. We ended up climbing all night the second night, and then got to the top on, I guess, what would kind of be like the third morning. But we had actually had like a full sleep in the middle, so I didn't feel like that strung out, I guess. It just felt like we just like slowly were moving, and time was passing, and sun was circling, and we were still moving, and then like it just didn't really matter, and no one wanted to go down, so we all kept going up, and then eventually we were like standing on the summit, and we're like, oh, that's cool, like here we are, and then like hiked all the way down. I think we're on like hour 58 or something, and the boys like picked us up by kayak. Like they came and kind of saved us about 2 kilometers of walking at the end by picking us up because they'd already been back and had to sleep themselves. And I think they came to pick us up, like, expecting us to just be, like, totally haggard, because they were like, you guys just did, like, a 50-hour push. Like,
well, I was pretty worried about them, you know?
But, yeah, we, like, just had a whole bunch of energy. We were super stoked, so we just, like, launched into storytelling about the route, and just, like, we were just really excited and totally awake. But, yeah, we named our route time as a construct, because it really just, like, felt very suiting to, like, just, like, this weird, like, kind of timelessness. There we go.
Yeah, so your tactics were like hooker by crook, or were you cleaning cracks, and did you care about free climbing? I mean, did it make any difference?
Yeah, we kind of like weren't really. We were like free climbing up to 511 kind of, and then also a lot of times like the cracks were kind of dirty, so the person like going first would lead it, I think, and then the followers would try and like send it like cleanly once it had been kind of like cleaned out on second, but we weren't like trying to leave the pitches again. There was an incredible, like, 12D finger crack. It was, like, pitch 3 or 4 or something that was followed cleanly. That was incredible. Yeah, not really. Yeah, it was kind of like...
Right. Yeah.
Get to the top.
It's a different type of journey. Yeah, for sure.
But then I guess on Sanderson's Hope, we the final cliff, we kind of did want to try to see if we could free climb it. Like, that was part of the challenge. Well, I mean, I guess, like, challenge 1 was, like, don't die, get to the top, try and do some free climbing, was sort of like the order of priority.
Yeah, so after Redwall, we basically had like not that much further to, like we were a 1 day paddle, one like big day paddle, till we were at the base of Chaos Horse Rock. So we didn't have to take all the big wall equipment like on the entire journey. We actually had shipped ahead of hand the
portaledges and static rope and stuff,
and static rope and haul bags. So just like the whole big wall shebang. So that we were able to like approach this in like in this like 900 meter cliff in like a completely different kind of style.
To begin with, I guess like we kind of camped opposite the wall, and we sort of spent a couple of days like discussing options, because it's quite committing. Like once you kind of choose which line to climb, you kind of like, it's quite hard to be like, oh, actually this one wasn't a good choice, we should try that other one over there. So we kind of spent a while talking about that, and there was these 2 existing aid lines, and I talked to both of the teams. They were there in like 2000 and 2001, so like 20 years ago. But we ended up settling on trying this line on the right side of the face that was new. Yeah, so like no, as far as I could tell, no one had been up there. And so we sort of, to begin with, the other 4 team members went to sort of pick up our big wall gear. And meanwhile, Bron and I got stuck in sort of like fixing ropes up the first little chunk of the face.
And so this cliff is like Redwall as well, but it's like it really goes like ocean and immediately cliff. Like so the first pitch is like you belay out of the kayak to do the first pitch, and then like build an anchor quite low down and like haul the boat like out of the water, and like the kind of boat like kayak rock kind of transition like it's kind of a slow process.
Complete nightmare in the dry.
But once we've established that, it's kind of we leave the fixed line there and we can kind of use it.
So we kind of got stuck in that, and probably looking at the line, I was like, I don't know, 20% that this thing's going to go free. Like it just looks like there's like some super blank sections. There were these 3 cracks, and these transitioning between the cracks, there was just these big blank sections, which could be like 30 meters or 40 meters of traverse, you know. And I was like, wow, like I guess we'll give it a go. Maybe we'll have to do some aid climbing, like who knows. Mm-hmm. And we got up to the first crack switch, and there was just like this perfect foot ledge, like half dome style, you know, like thank God ledge style foot ledge, just to like literally walk across. And it was like 5'9". and so we just like kind of just like couldn't believe what we found. And the rock was like by far the best rock quality we had all trip, like really, really nice cracks. And so we actually made really good progress, and we managed to fix ropes like about halfway up the wall.
I forgot to say the second unknown crack switch was when I was on lead, and it ended up being 5'6".
Yeah, it was like unbelievable. Like these just like huge blank sections of wall just like turned out to just have these like really conveniently placed ledges that you couldn't see from
Because they were kind of sloping and the light didn't really catch them. Yeah. It was weird.
So we fixed ropes about halfway up the wall, and then we decided to commit to the wall and build a kind of wall camp about halfway up.
So those guys are back now, and we kind of just start doing this a few days of basically just like shoveling loads up.
But hauling was going to suck because like there was just like the wall was like not the bottom chunk of the wall was like not well set up for hauling. So we basically just like Jumad loads.
It was
just like
really
wear a big backpack and like jug up and then wrap back down and fill it up with more stuff and jug back up. And so we established this wall camp, got up there and basically had one day of climbing, and then just like apocalypse, like storm happened. And we kind of knew this was going to happen from the forecast, but I guess we were like just being optimistic or something. And there was also like none of us had ever actually sat out a storm in a portaledge before, so we kind of wanted to try, or I thought I wanted to try.
So you have to realize, like, at this point, it's halfway through August. So we knew all along, like, we wanted to kind of push the kayak as much as we could, because by this time up there, it's, like, starting to kind of, like, summer is over, and we're starting to transition pretty quickly into fall. And sure enough, we get up to our wall camp, and pretty much the next day start getting snowed on.
Yeah, and then we spent 4 days just, like, sitting in the ledges, and it was...
And 2 separate storms. We had
quite miserable.
2-day snowstorm, and then we kind of had 1 day of we were able to climb, and then another snowstorm.
Yeah. The portaledge flies, like, they're like not that waterproof, you know? Like they we were like quite wet, and like things were getting wetter. And also we were just
on our
our portaledge kept getting ice coating on the outside and sometimes on the inside. And things were like quite miserable. And also like we kind of packed 10 days of supplies for the wall, expecting there to be some tricky free climbing up high or something and give ourselves a chance. And that time was just ticking down. And, we just like weren't climbing. And then it was kind of like the 4th morning of the storm. And it was still just like, we were just like in this, like, it wasn't actively raining, but we were just in this like thick freezing mist. And we were kind of like, I was just getting...
But it kind of stopped.
I was just getting more and more antsy, like, to do something, like, partly just because I've been sitting still for 4 days, but also because, like, this objective was, like, potentially, like, slipping away. And so I just remember being like, guys, I'm thinking about going climbing. And people were just like, what? So we basically, me, Bron, and Kelsey sort of went up there in, like, just, like, the worst conditions imaginable. And
well, it wasn't actively raining. It had stopped. Like, it was like mist.
Yeah, but the rock was soaked, like literally like dripping. Our route was like kind of a waterfall. We were actually able to fill up water from our route. Yeah, so we were just like leading these pitches in just like terrible conditions. But then we just popped out above the storm, and the top like 200 meters of wall was like in the sun. And we were up there at this belay, like the 3 of us, and we got on the radio, and we're like, "You guys, like, we're in the sun. You've got to come up here, start jugging." And they were like down in the portaledge camp, like still just like in the storm. And they were like, "You like what? You must be joking."
It was just this huge inversion, and we just popped out above it, and you could just see forever, just like this inversion of clouds, and the sun was just shining. It was like the kind of airplane experience you get when you like pop through the clouds and you're like above the clouds and in the sun.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So like, we just like went to the summit that day, and we had like a few shenanigans. Jaron, our filmmaker, like was like leading the last pitch and like kind of was like taking some whips and like having a bit of a time, and then he ended up like hand drilling a bolt. So that was like a little bit of an epic, but like overall we like, we got up there and the climbing, we managed to free the route at like 511 plus, which is not all that hard. So it was like quite amazing. And then, just to be on the summit with all 6 of us after like 40 days of paddling to get there and above this like cloud inversion was pretty amazing.
That sounds super special.
Kind of like a peak experience of some kind. Yeah.
How far away from civilization were you at that point? Well, how much more did you have to do?
Not that far, because the town at the end was about 15 kilometers.
Yeah, the town's not that far. It's like cool. 2 islands away, and so we were a very long way away from where we started, but not that far from where we ended.
Mm-hmm.
Which meant that was kind of allowed us to have all our big wall gear get shipped, and we were able to kind of go pick it up.
Actually, just using normal freight, like no private, charter. yeah, basically stood on the top in this like beautiful kind of sunshine. We could actually see over the top of the entire island because it's one of the tallest cliffs around. And so we could actually look and we could see Redwall, which was the cliff we'd climbed like 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
Like over the top, the backside, we could see it like rising out of the ocean behind us.
And so that day was like 24 hours round trip from Portal Edge Camp to the summit and back down was 24 hours round trip, and then we slept.
And then we got a forecast saying that basically it was going to start raining the next night, like the next evening.
But it was like apocalypse forecast, like. And so then we had another 28-hour day
of stripping
just basically stripping everything off the wall, taking all our ropes down, all our camp down, and then back into the kayaks, paddled back across the fjord to the sort of base camp stash area.
And within an hour, it started to rain.
Like literally as we were getting out of the boats, the first raindrops were falling, and then it was like, the worst storm of the entire trip. Like Bron and I were like lying on our backs in the tent with our feet against the wall where the wind was coming from, just to kind of hold our tent.
Well,
together.
That's not even that bad. The other guys, like other guys, had their tents beside each other, and they ended up kind of being in a river. Like there was like a runoff. The stream like overflowed, and just like basically they were like outside, like I think like in their underwear, basically like digging trenches with the ice axe to like divert the water from like not just like totally soaking them. This is like after our like mega push to like get everything off the wall. So the timing was quite good, I guess.
So yeah, we were very happy to not be on the wall when that was happening.
And then we basically just slept for 4 days in rainstorm, and then paddled back to town. The end.
The end. What a trip.
Yeah.
I mean, what, like, you know, is the sitting on the wall in the snowstorm icing up like a low point, or the portage a low point? Like where was it? Like, I mean, it's probably personal, but where these expeditions, when they're as hard as that, you know, they have a like fuck this point. Of like, what the fuck? Why did we do this? Or were you guys able to just, you know, whistle along like it was all just part of the deal?
I was whistling.
Yeah, definitely not whistling. I don't really honestly like know where it comes from, but I do find I kind of have just like this kind of like maniacal motivation to make these trips happen. Like once I've decided like this is what we're going to try and do, it's never I at no point on the trip was I like, fuck this, like, I just want to, you know, like, give up kind of thing. And I don't know where that comes from, but it's like, it's to the point where sometimes I'm like a little bit like confused. Like, I feel like I'm like watching my actions and I'm just like still going to make this thing happen, which just seems completely like unlikely or impossible.
Yeah. But I think a little bit of this too is something we've kind of like analyzed coming back from this trip, compared to even like our trip up to Baffin Island the few summers before, was that actually in terms of like fear for our lives and kind of like the actual kind of like objective danger that we felt on this expedition was actually like relatively low. So I kind of felt like it was like a lot of, I mean, it's still obviously quite a dangerous like setting.
There's polar bears and stuff.
Yeah, there's polar bears and it's still like big wall remote stuff, but the rock quality was incredible. There was no glaciers. I don't know. I definitely
felt much more afraid of dying on Baffin Island than in Greenland, which was
so like
quite
I
nice.
think that a thing that would make us turn around, which we did bail off a route in Baffin, would be kind of like the like safety aspect. Whereas in this case, like the challenges that kept hitting up against us were kind of just like physical exertion challenges, and so you could kind of just like buckle down and just keep plowing, I guess. I mean, I'm definitely not trying to understate, like, for sure it was, like, a lot of risk assessment going on, but...
All right, in Baffin, you had to eat all that white water, too, Jacob. So, you know.
Yeah, and I think just the style we were climbing things in, like, a lot more kind of big alpine pushes on huge faces, whereas,
I think the like, Alpine style
first ascent.
Alpine style
like,
adventure climbing
El-cap-sized walls, like...
is kind of, like, it's kind of, like, the most dangerous. It feels to me like it feels like the least margin for error, and I guess we did do some of that on this trip. But climbing in wall style, like bring the kitchen sink, have a portal edge camp you can retreat to. In some ways, it's like a lot safer, and that was also a conscious decision going into this trip. I know coming home from Baffin Island, I was like
a little bit like overstimulated.
I don't think I want to do that again, kind of thing, or just like
differently.
Yeah, I want if I go back to those places, I want to sort of like conduct myself a little differently, because it just felt like,
there's only so many times you can put yourself in that objective hazard.
Basically, we got a bit lucky.
Right.
Like, it's not like you have to get a bit lucky on a trip like Baffin to come back alive. And I love going to these remote places, and I want to keep doing it, but I want to do it in a way where I'm not just getting lucky, because, and so, yeah, I think that made it easier to be like, not have the kind of like turnaround feeling. Mm-hmm. It's like, actually, this is like an acceptable level of risk, or whatever, acceptable to us.
Well, let me ask you a question about like ending a trip like that. And I mean, you guys aren't necessarily people who do, these things every year or even multiple times a year. And some climbers, especially like sponsored climbers, they do. And I've always been curious about how you sort of reflect on a trip and put it into a special place when when you're already scheming or planning, for the next trip before you're practically off. I mean, some people even have another trip booked, and, those nights run together. So as you're reflecting on this trip, and maybe you've talked to your fellow team members about how they feel about it, like, what are sort of like the really special things specific to this trip that you think you'll, sort of tuck away and always be like, yeah, that was that trip, versus just this feeling of camaraderie or this feeling of success or anything else. But it's a little bit of a difficult question, but, maybe just like a point of when you're on the trip of having a moment of sort of epiphany of like, okay, this is why we came, or this is going to be special about this particular place, style, climb, moment even.
Yeah, I definitely don't find I'm able to do these trips sort of like all the time. And I found like I have a pretty consistent 3-year clock where after 1 year, I'm like, hell no, never doing that again. That sucked. And then another year goes by and I'm like, actually, yeah, that would be cool. That was kind of awesome. And I've like forgotten how uncomfortable it was, but I don't have anything organized. And then I spend the next year like planning to kind of make it happen. And then, so yeah, 2025.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a big one.
We got some time before.
But like in terms of like a takeaway from the trip, I think being in the kayaks in the fog in the ice fjord was kind of like one moment that'll really stand out to me. And then I think also like being on the summit with all 6 of us, kind of like, because the goal always was to have this kind of like team experience, and like climbing as a team of 6 on a big wall is like not the most efficient thing you could do. Like it, like it was definitely like, it's kind of a clusterfuck having 6 people up there, and or like you have to take steps to stop it from being a clusterfuck. So a lot of the time when we were working on the wall, we actually had like night team, day team. So we just have 12 hours kind of on where you'd be on the wall and there'd be 3 of us. So it was me, Bron, and Jaron would be up there for 12 hours.
We were the night owls.
We were the night team, and then we'd switch and day team would take over, and Zach, Angelo, and Kelsey would be up. And that way there's just like, less people, less overhead hazard of people above you, and like, sure. Obviously only one person can be pushing the rope, like leading at any one time or whatever. So, but yeah, like kind of like doing it all together as a team of 6, and
felt at times a little ridiculous, but like also
ridiculous, but also like pretty unique about the trip. Because, like Baffin Island or other trips I've been on, mostly I've been at the top of these cliffs, like just with one partner, like, and so like to do it with all of us was pretty cool and pretty special, I thought.
You thought of anything, Bron?
That's all I got.
I can't just ride on the Jacob's answer. It was beautiful. Yeah, I think the things that stand out for sure is kind of like the journey. I think that, our climbing days to kayaking days were definitely like that ratio was heavily favoring the kayak. Like the kayak days in terms of days
actually
spent.
Climbing on dry rock on the trip was probably like 5
so
out of 65.
One day, and then my thing was 2 days, and then we probably
yeah, okay,
I feel like it was maybe 8 or 9 or something.
8
but with that said, like just like some of the best rock climbing, especially Redwall and
our last route is just it's like it's kind of like, it's so good. Like, I feel like, I really hope like our photos do it justice or whatever, and someone goes and repeats it one day, because it's like, honestly, like the Becky Chouinard or something. Like, it's split across.
And we were like,
so
I guess like originally had in mind, like we left ourselves quite a lot of, we were like trying to leave ourselves enough like time and resources to be able to kind of maybe hit up against some 512, 513 pitches. But the fact that the whole thing is basically just sustained 510, 511, it's kind of just like this outrageous, like classic route. I mean, like it's just this like beautiful granite slab, like totally unbroken, following these hand cracks with like unlikely ledge traverses, and then
we actually really wanted to repeat the route in a day at the end. Like, we were kind of waiting in base camp, wondering if we'd get a window to just like go and rage, because also like all the rappels were set, like it was ready to go, and it would be so fun just to simul climb the whole thing in like, 15 hours or whatever.
Yeah, but it just ended up just getting soaked, and we just had rain for like 4 days. And,
so someone else should go and climb it.
Yeah, it's kind of just outrageous. And then the crux of the whole route, it goes about 511 minus, and then the crux of the whole route is like this unlikely slab boulder problem into an overhanging hand crack at 900 meters.
It's literally the last pitch.
Literally the last pitch is the 11 plus, which like when you're 900 meters above this like iceberg filled ocean, like I don't know, it's just like pretty epic, I guess. Really cool. Yeah, we're super proud of the line, and it would be like incredible for someone to go out there and repeat it. And you can actually only paddle 15 kilometers and get to it if you don't want to do the 40-day thing. So yeah.
All right, folks, thanks for listening. And of course, thanks to Bron and Jacob for coming back on the show. Both of them have been on before. Bron twice. That was her third appearance. And their film is ready to go. It's going to be premiering November 2nd in the Brit Rock Tour. And you can find out about that at their Instagram, Brit Rock Films, or, just look on the internet, Google it, Brit Rock. There's 3 films in there, and one of the other ones is with Anna Hazelnut, who was on the show earlier this year, or maybe it was last year. She was on the show, I know that. All runs together. So yeah, check it out, Brit Rock Films. Brit Rock Films on Instagram. Okay, regular ep up in a few days, so stay tuned for that. And of course, check your knots.
All visible objects are but as pasteboard masks. Some inscrutable yet reasoning thing puts forth the molding of their features. The white whale tasks me. He heaps me. Yet he is but a mask. 'Tis the thing behind the mask I chiefly hate. The malignant thing that has plagued and frightened man since time began. The thing that mauls and mutilates our race, not killing us outright, but letting us live on with half a heart and half a lung. God, keep us whole.